At the edge of the Arctic Circle, where the North Atlantic crashes against volcanic shores, lies Iceland, a land born from fire and shaped by ice. An island that exists because two tectonic plates are tearing the Earth apart, millimeter by millimeter, year after year. This is not a place that simply exists. It is a place that is constantly becoming, where glaciers carve valleys while volcanoes erupt beneath them, where geysers shoot boiling water into freezing air, where the sun never sets in summer and barely rises in winter. Iceland is geology in motion, a laboratory of the planet's raw power. And yet, for all its violence, there is beauty here unlike anywhere else on Earth. Covering just over 40,000 square miles, Iceland sits alone in the North Atlantic, roughly halfway between Europe and North America. But its isolation is not just geographic. This island exists on a seam, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates diverge. The rift runs right through the island's heart, a wound in the Earth's crust that will never heal. Instead, it grows wider, about 2 centimeters per year, the same rate your fingernails grow. Over millions of years, that slow drift has split continents, and Iceland is the visible scar. The Vikings, who first settled here in the 9th century, called it the land of ice and fire. They weren't being poetic, they were being literal. Iceland has more than 30 active volcanic systems. Some erupt every few years, others sleep for centuries, then wake without warning. In 2010, Jökulsárlón erupted, throwing ash 30,000 feet into the sky and shutting down air travel across Europe for days. The name itself became a linguistic nightmare for news anchors worldwide. Yet Icelanders barely blinked. Volcanoes here are not disasters. They are family, unpredictable, sometimes destructive, but inseparable from life itself. And beneath the fire lies ice. Glaciers cover more than 11% of Iceland's surface. Massive ice caps like Vatnajökull, the largest in Europe, sprawling across 3,000 square miles. These frozen rivers grind through valleys, sculpting the land with relentless patience. But they are not eternal. Year by year they retreat, melting into rivers that carve new paths, revealing black sand beaches and hidden lagoons. The ice remembers everything. Trapped within are air bubbles from centuries past, volcanic ash from ancient eruptions, and dust from distant deserts carried by winds across oceans. To study Iceland's glaciers is to read the Earth's climate history, written in frozen layers. Yet despite its harshness, Iceland is inhabited. About 380,000 people live here, 2/3 of them concentrated in and around Reykjavik, the world's northernmost capital. The rest are scattered in fishing villages, farming communities, and isolated homesteads where the nearest neighbor might be an hour's drive away. Life here requires resilience. Winters bring darkness that lasts for months. Storms arrive with little warning. Roads close, flights cancel. The Atlantic batters the coast with waves tall as buildings. And yet, Icelanders have not just survived, they have thrived, building a society that ranks among the happiest and most prosperous on Earth. How? By turning fire and ice into energy. Iceland sits on a geothermal hotspot. Beneath the ground, water heats to boiling and beyond. Tap into that and you have limitless power. Nearly 90% of homes here are heated geothermally. Hot water pumped directly from underground reservoirs. No furnaces, no fuel bills, just Earth's furnace, freely given. The rest of the country's electricity comes from hydropower, glacial meltwater channeled through turbines. The result is one of the cleanest energy grids on the planet. Iceland runs almost entirely on renewable power. Not because of ideology, but because geography made it easy. And then there is the light, or the lack of it. Near the Arctic Circle, the tilt of the Earth creates extremes. In June, the sun barely sets. Midnight arrives, but daylight lingers. The sky glows in shades of gold and blue. Locals call it the midnight sun. Tourists stay awake for days, mesmerized. Sleep becomes optional when darkness never arrives. But winter is the opposite. By December, the sun rises around 11 a.m. and sets by 3 p.m. For weeks, twilight is the brightest it gets. And on the darkest nights, when the sky is clear and the solar winds are strong, the aurora borealis appears. The northern lights, curtains of green, pink, and violet rippling across the heavens. They move like living things, dancing to rhythms only they understand. Scientists explain them as charged particles colliding with the atmosphere. But standing beneath them, physics feels insufficient. They feel like something more. A reminder that Earth is not separate from the cosmos, but part of it. Ancient Norse mythology saw them as the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge connecting Earth to Asgard. The Sami people believed they were the souls of the dead. Today, scientists map the solar winds and predict when the lights will appear. But no equation can capture what it feels like to stand in the frozen dark and watch the sky come alive. Reykjavik sits on the southwestern coast, where most of Iceland's population has gathered. From above, it looks modest. Low buildings, colorful roofs, and a harbor filled with fishing boats. No skyscrapers, no sprawl. Just a city that knows its place in the landscape. The name means Smoky Bay, given by the first Viking settler who saw steam rising from the hot springs. That steam still rises today. Geothermal vents run beneath the streets, heating sidewalks so snow melts as it falls. In winter, you can walk barefoot on warm pavement while snowflakes land on your shoulders. The city's heart is small enough to cross on foot in 20 minutes. Hallgrímskirkja, the towering concrete church, dominates the skyline. Its design mimics the basalt columns found. Throughout Iceland, frozen waterfalls turn to stone. From the top, the view stretches across the bay to distant mountains. On clear days, you can see Snæfellsjökull, the glacier-capped volcano made famous by Jules Verne in Journey to the Center of the Earth. He imagined it as a gateway to the underworld. In a way, he wasn't wrong. Iceland's volcanoes are as close as humans can get to Earth's molten core without dying. Down by the harbor, the Sun Voyager sculpture sits on the waterfront, a steel skeleton of a Viking ship, gleaming against the gray sea. It doesn't depict a real ship, but a dream of one, a promise of discovery. Reykjavik may feel like the edge of the world, but for the Vikings, it was a starting point. From here, they sailed to Greenland, then North America, long before Columbus was born. The ocean was not a barrier, it was a highway. Yet for all its Viking heritage, modern Reykjavik feels more cosmopolitan than ancient. Cafes line the streets, their windows fogged with warmth. Art galleries showcase contemporary work alongside medieval manuscripts. Music spills from basement bars where local bands play to crowds of 20. Iceland punches far above its weight culturally. For a nation smaller than most cities, it has produced an outsized number of musicians, writers, and artists. Perhaps isolation breeds creativity. When the world is far away, you have no choice but to make your own. But Reykjavik is not Iceland. It is where Icelanders go to escape Iceland. To understand the island, you must leave the city behind. 30 miles east, the road climbs into a different world. Welcome to the Golden Circle, the most visited route in the country. 3 stops that showcase the island's elemental forces in concentrated form. Þingvellir National Park, Geysir, and Gullfoss. Geology, history, and spectacle compressed into a day trip. Þingvellir is where Iceland's story begins. Not just geologically, but politically. This valley, flanked by cliffs and crossed by a river, is where the world's oldest parliament convened in 930 AD. The Alþingi, a gathering of chieftains who met each summer to settle disputes, pass laws, and forge alliances. They had no king, no central authority, just representatives from across the island, meeting in the open air, democracy before the word existed. The location was not chosen for comfort. Þingvellir sits directly on the rift between tectonic plates. The North American plate forms one wall of the valley, the Eurasian plate forms the other. Between them, the ground is literally being torn apart. You can walk between continents here, stand with one foot in Europe, the other in North America. The rift widens about 2 centimeters per year. Imperceptible in a human lifetime, but over millennia, continents drift apart. Iceland is caught in the middle, constantly being pulled in 2 directions. Perhaps that is why the Alþingi lasted so long. When the land itself cannot hold still, maybe, compromise becomes essential. The valley floor is carpeted with moss and wildflowers in summer. In winter, it disappears beneath snow. The Jökulsárlón River carves through the rocks, tumbling into a deep gorge called Landmannalaugar. The water is so clear you can see every pebble on the bottom. It comes from Þingvellir, Iceland's largest natural lake, fed by glacial meltwater filtered through layers of volcanic rock. The result is water so pure it requires no treatment. You can dip your hands into the river and drink. Beneath the surface lies Silfra, a fissure where the tectonic plates are submerged. Divers come from around the world to swim between continents. The visibility here exceeds 100 meters, making it one of the clearest bodies of water on Earth. The water temperature hovers just above freezing year-round. A dry suit is not optional, but those who brave the cold are rewarded with an otherworldly experience. Floating weightless in crystalline water, surrounded by jagged volcanic rock. Geology made intimate. From Þingvellir, the road continues northeast toward Geysir. The word itself is Icelandic, the name of the hot spring that gave geysers everywhere their name. The original Geysir once erupted every few minutes, shooting water 200 feet into the air. Then it stopped. Earthquakes can wake it temporarily, but for the most part it sleeps. Yet just a few meters away, Jökulsárlón has taken over. Every 5 to 10 minutes, the ground rumbles. Water churns. Then with a roar, a column of boiling water blasts skyward, 60 feet, 80 feet, sometimes higher. For a few seconds, physics reverses. Water becomes a pillar. Then gravity remembers itself, and the column collapses into mist and spray. The ground here is alive. Steam vents hiss. Mud pots bubble like cauldrons. The earth is stained in shades of yellow and orange from sulfur and iron. The smell is unmistakable. Rotten eggs mixed with whetstone. Hydrogen sulfide rising from deep underground. Stand too close to a vent, and the heat becomes uncomfortable. Not dangerous, but a reminder that beneath this thin crust, the earth is molten. Geothermal activity here is driven by the same forces that built Iceland. Magma rises close to the surface, heating groundwater until it boils. Pressure builds. Eventually, something has to give. The result is Stråkar and dozens of smaller vents, a landscape where water and fire meet in violent bursts. Scientists study these systems to understand volcanic behavior. Engineers tap them for energy. Tourists stand behind ropes and film on their phones. Everyone agrees on one thing. This place is not quite of this world. 10 miles farther, the road ends at Gullfoss, the Golden Falls. The name fits. When the sun hits the spray, rainbows shimmer in the mist, arcing across the gorge. But the falls themselves need no embellishment. The Fita River, fed by Jökulsárlón Glacier, plunges over 2 tiers, dropping 100 feet into a narrow canyon. The volume of water is staggering. In summer, 140 cubic meters per second crash over the edge. The roar drowns out conversation. The mist soaks anyone standing nearby. In winter, the falls freeze partially, transforming into a cascade of ice and blue-white foam. The canyon below was carved over thousands of years by water and glacial floods. Iceland's glaciers periodically release catastrophic outbursts, Jökulsárlón, when subglacial lakes drain suddenly. These floods carry icebergs and boulders downstream, scouring the land. Gullfoss sits in the path of such floods. Each one reshapes the gorge a little more. In the early 20th century, foreign investors wanted to dam Gullfoss for hydroelectric power. The farmer who owned the land refused to sell. His daughter, Sigríður Tómasdóttir, walked 120 kilometers to Reykjavik repeatedly to protest. She threatened to throw herself into the falls if the project proceeded. Eventually, the plans were abandoned. Gullfoss remained untouched. Today, a memorial stone honors Sigríður as Iceland's first environmentalist. The falls she saved draw nearly 1 million visitors a year. Beyond the Golden Circle, the landscape opens into a patchwork of lava fields and highland plateaus. This is the interior, a realm of extremes. No towns, no services, just gravel roads that disappear into the distance. The highlands are accessible only in summer, and even then a 4x4 is essential. Rivers run without bridges, volcanic deserts stretch for miles. GPS signals weaken, phone service vanishes. This is Iceland stripped to its essentials: rock, water, sky. Among the highlands lies Landmannalaugar, one of Iceland's most surreal destinations. The name means the people's pools. referring to the natural hot springs where travelers once bathed. But the real draw is the mountains. They look painted. Reds, yellows, greens, and blues streak across the slopes. These are rhyolite formations, volcanic rock rich in minerals that oxidize into vivid colors. The result is a landscape that feels more like abstract art than geology. Hiking here is disorienting. Trails wind through obsidian fields, black volcanic glass crunching underfoot. Then suddenly the black gives way to orange and pink. Steam rises from fissures in the ground. Snow lingers in shaded gullies even in July. At the base of the mountains, a warm river flows, fed by geothermal vents. Locals have dammed it into a natural pool where you can soak while surrounded by alien terrain. Landmannalaugar sits on the Laugavegir Trail, one of the world's great multi-day hikes. The trail runs 55 kilometers south to Thorsmörk, crossing volcanic deserts, glacial rivers, and alpine valleys. It takes 3 to 4 days. There are no resorts, only mountain huts with bunks and stoves. Hikers carry their supplies, ford rivers, and navigate weather that can shift from sun to snow in minutes. The reward is solitude, landscapes that few humans ever see, the sense of walking through creation itself. From the Highlands, Iceland's glaciers dominate the horizon. Vatnajökull, the largest, sprawls across the southeast. Its name means the water glacier, and it holds more ice than all of Europe's other glaciers combined. Beneath it lie active volcanoes, Bardarbunga, Grímsvötn, Jökulsárlón. These subglacial eruptions are among the most dangerous on Earth. When magma meets ice, explosions follow. Meltwater floods out in catastrophic surges, carrying icebergs the size of buildings. In 2014, Bardarbunga erupted beneath Vatnajökull. For 6 months, lava fountains shot from fissures, creating a new lava field larger than Manhattan. The eruption was the largest in Iceland in over 200 years. Yet because it occurred in the remote highlands, no one was hurt. Icelanders monitored it from a distance, watching the spectacle unfold on webcams. When it finally stopped, the glacier had melted significantly. New rivers formed. The landscape had changed yet again. At Vatnajökull's southern edge, the ice meets the sea. Black sand beaches stretch for miles, interrupted by glacial lagoons where icebergs float like sculptures. The most famous is Jökulsárlón, a lagoon filled with blue-white ice calving from Jökull Glacier. The icebergs drift slowly toward the ocean, carried by tides and currents. Some wash up on the beach, stranded on black sand. Locals call it Diamond Beach, and the name fits. Ice glitters like gemstones under the sun, translucent and impossibly blue. The icebergs are centuries old. Some contain volcanic ash from eruptions that happened before humans arrived in Iceland. Others hold air bubbles from atmospheres long gone. They melt slowly, releasing ancient water into the Atlantic. Standing among them feels like witnessing the end of something. Glaciers that took millennia to form are vanishing in decades. Jökulsárlón itself didn't exist a century ago. It formed as the glacier retreated, leaving a depression that filled with meltwater. Now it grows larger every year. Beautiful, yes, but also a warning. Iceland is changing. The ice that defined it for so long is disappearing. Within a generation, some of the island's smaller glaciers will be gone entirely. What replaces them is uncertain. More rivers, more lagoons, maybe new lakes. The land will adapt, as it always has. But something will be lost. The glaciers are not just ice, they are memory, and once they melt, that memory is gone forever. The south coast of Iceland is where the elements collide most dramatically. Here, glaciers march down from the highlands until they meet the Atlantic. Rivers born from ice plunge over cliffs in thunderous waterfalls. Black sand beaches stretch for miles, born from volcanic eruptions that happened when no humans were there to witness them. And overhead, clouds race across the sky, driven by winds that have crossed an ocean without meeting land. The weather here changes faster than anywhere else on the island. Sun, rain, fog, and wind can cycle through in an hour, sometimes in minutes. Route 1, the Ring Road, hugs the coast as it circles Iceland. Heading east from Reykjavik, the landscape transforms quickly. Fields give way to lava flows. Rivers widen into deltas choked with glacial silt. And then, without warning, the road passes beneath a waterfall. Seljalandsfoss. It drops 60 meters from a cliff that was once a coastline. Thousands of years ago, the sea reached this far inland. Then the land rose, or the sea retreated. What remains is a curtain of water falling into empty space. What makes Seljalandsfoss unique is the path behind it. The cliff has eroded enough to create a hollow space. Visitors can walk behind the waterfall, watching the world through a veil of mist and spray. The roar drowns out everything else. Water crashes onto rocks below, throwing up clouds of mist that soak clothes in seconds. In winter, the path becomes treacherous. Ice forms on the rocks. Icicles hang from the overhang like teeth. But in summer, wildflowers bloom in the spray, drinking water that was snow on a glacier just days before. A few kilometers down the road, another waterfall appears. Skogafoss. This one is different. No hollow to walk behind. Just a wall of water 25 meters wide, falling straight down. The volume is immense. In summer, glacial meltwater swells the river, turning the falls into a roaring torrent. The spray rises so high, it creates perpetual rainbows on sunny days. Sometimes double rainbows. The mist drifts across the plain, visible from miles away. Stairs climb the cliff beside the falls. 527 steps, each one slick with moisture. At the top, the view opens across the coast. The river winds through green fields before disappearing over the edge. Beyond lies the ocean, gray and restless. And behind in the distance, the white cap of Jökulsárlón rises above the clouds, the volcano that stopped Europe in 2010. From here, it looks peaceful, deceptive. Skogafoss sits at the edge of Skogafoss, a small village that exists mostly because the falls are here. A few houses, a hotel, a folk museum preserving turf houses from centuries past. The museum is a reminder of how Icelanders once lived. Homes built into hillsides, roofs made of sod and grass. In winter, snow would cover them entirely, insulating against the cold. Inside, families huddled around central hearths, burning driftwood gathered from beaches. Wood doesn't grow easily in Iceland. Trees are scarce, twisted by wind. What little timber existed was too valuable to burn. So Icelanders burned turf, peat, and whatever the ocean washed ashore. The turf houses are dark inside. Tiny windows let in minimal light. In winter, when daylight lasted only a few hours, families would spend weeks in near darkness. They told stories, sang songs, memorized sagas passed down through generations. Iceland's literary tradition didn't begin with books. It began with memory. Poets would recite epics, thousands of lines long, genealogies stretching back centuries. Every family knew its lineage, its feuds, its honor. In a land this harsh, history was survival. Beyond Skogar, the ring road continues east, passing farm after farm. Sheep graze on hillsides so steep it seems impossible they don't tumble off. These are Icelandic sheep, descendants of animals brought by the Vikings 100 years ago. They are smaller than mainland breeds, adapted to survive on sparse vegetation and cold that would kill other livestock. Their wool is prized, thick and insulating. Farmers still round them up each autumn in a tradition called Reykjavik, herding sheep down from highland pastures before winter snows trap them. The landscape here is deceptively gentle. Green fields, distant mountains, the occasional farmhouse painted bright red or yellow. But look closer, and the violence reveals itself. The soil is black, volcanic. Every field, every pasture sits on lava. Some flows are ancient, weathered into rich earth. Others are raw, sharp, and barren. Eldrán, the fire lava, covers 565 square kilometers. It erupted in 1783 from the Laki Fissure, one of the deadliest eruptions in recorded history. Laki didn't just erupt, it tore open. A 25-kilometer crack in the earth, vomiting lava for 8 months. The flow buried villages, poisoned rivers, and killed livestock across Iceland. Ash and gas spread across Europe, dimming the sun. Crops failed from Ireland to Russia. In France, famine contributed to the conditions that sparked revolution. In Iceland, a quarter of the population starved. The event is remembered as the Motuhardindin, the mist hardships, a haze that wouldn't lift, a sky that stayed dark even in summer. Today, Eldrán is covered in moss, thick, spongy, impossibly green. It blankets the lava in a carpet so soft it looks inviting, but walking on it is forbidden. The moss is fragile. A single footprint can take decades to heal. The landscape feels primordial, like Earth looked before plants evolved. Lava fields stretching to the horizon, softened only by this thin layer of life. In some places, steam still rises from cracks, a reminder that beneath the moss, the rock is young. Geologically speaking, this eruption happened yesterday. Further along the coast, the ground drops away. Dyrhólaey, a massive sea arch jutting into the Atlantic. The name means door-hole island, though it's no longer an island. A strip of black sand now connects it to the mainland. The arch itself is 120 meters high, carved by waves over millennia. In summer, puffins nest on the cliffs, thousands of them. Their orange beaks and clumsy flight make them Iceland's unofficial mascot. They spend most of the year at sea, diving for fish. But every summer, they return to the same burrows, laying a single egg and raising chicks before vanishing again into the ocean. From the top of Dyrhólaey, the view stretches along Reynisfjara, Iceland's most famous black beach. The sand isn't really sand. It's pulverized basalt, volcanic rock ground to powder by waves. The beach is framed by towering basalt columns, hexagonal formations rising like organ pipes. These columns form when lava cools evenly and contracts, cracking into geometric patterns. The same process creates the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, Devil's Postpile in California. But here the columns stand at the ocean's edge, battered by waves that have crossed the Atlantic without interruption. The waves here are dangerous. Sneaker waves, they're called. Most roll in predictably, crashing and retreating. But every so often, a rogue wave surges farther up the beach, catching tourists off guard. Every year, someone gets swept into the water. The Atlantic here is deadly. Even in summer, the temperature hovers around 10 degrees Celsius. Fall in, and you have minutes before hypothermia sets in. The currents are brutal, pulling swimmers out to sea faster than they can swim back. Signs warn in multiple languages. Do not turn your back on the ocean. And yet people do. Posing for photos, chasing the perfect wave, underestimating the sea. Offshore, sea stacks rise from the water. Reynisfjara, the troll rocks. Icelandic folklore says they are trolls caught by the sunrise and turned to stone. A more prosaic explanation is erosion. These were once part of the mainland, but waves have carved away everything except the hardest basalt cores. They stand now like sentinels, home to seabirds and nothing else. At sunset, when the light turns orange and the waves churn white against black sand, the scene feels mythic, not quite real, as if this place exists outside normal geography. Just inland from Reynisfjara lies the village of Vík, the southernmost settlement in Iceland. Population around 300, a church on a hill, a gas station, a few shops selling wool sweaters and postcards. Vík exists because it has a harbor, sheltered somewhat from the worst of the Atlantic storms. Fishing boats moor here, though the sea is never truly calm. Winters bring waves that crash over the breakwater, flooding the lower streets. Summers are marginally gentler, but fog rolls in without warning, thick enough to erase the horizon. Behind Vík looms Katla, one of Iceland's most dangerous volcanoes. It sleeps beneath Mýrdalsjökull Glacier, hidden under ice, but it's not extinct. Katla erupts on average every 40 to 80 years. The last major eruption was in 1918. Do the math, it's overdue. When Katla wakes, and it will wake, the consequences will be catastrophic. The eruption will melt vast amounts of ice, triggering a glacial flood, a Jökulsárlón, that will race down toward the coast. Vík sits directly in its path. Evacuation plans are in place. Sirens will sound. Residents will flee to high ground. The village might be washed away entirely, buried under ice, mud, and volcanic debris, and yet people stay, because this is home. And in Iceland, living with danger is part of the deal. Kornisan. Of Vík, the landscape shifts. The glaciers retreat slightly inland. The coast becomes more rugged. Cliffs rise higher. Rivers carve deeper gorges. This is the edge of Vatnajökull National Park, a protected area larger than some countries. The park encompasses glaciers, volcanoes, lava fields, and canyons. It's a place where geology overwhelms everything else, where nature writes the rules and humans are just passing through. One of the park's hidden gems is Fjadrarglufur, a canyon so narrow and deep it feels carved by something other than water. The river that created it is small, barely noticeable. Yet over millennia, it has cut a gorge 2 kilometers long and up to 100 meters deep. The walls are sheer, layers of volcanic rock stacked like pages in a book. Moss clings to sheltered spots. In summer, the river is gentle, winding through the bottom in lazy curves. In spring, when snow melt swells the flow, it becomes a torrent. The canyon was relatively unknown until 2015, when Justin Bieber filmed a music video here. Within months, visitors flooded in. Footpaths eroded. Vegetation was trampled. The site was closed temporarily to recover. Now, access is restricted, and boardwalks have been installed to protect the landscape. It's a reminder that even remote places are fragile, that beauty once found attracts crowds. And crowds, even well-meaning ones, can destroy what they came to see. Further east, the glaciers dominate again. Skaftafell, once a separate park, now part of Vatnajökull National Park, sits at the foot of Iceland's largest ice cap. The name means wooden stick fell, a reference to the birch woods that once grew here. These woods are gone now, cut down centuries ago. What remains is a landscape of ice and rock, waterfalls and glaciers, trails that lead into realms few people see. Svartifoss, the Black Falls, is Skaftafell's most iconic feature. The waterfall itself is modest, about 20 meters high, but it falls over a cliff of basalt columns, hexagonal shapes so perfect they look artificial. The columns frame the falling water like a sculpture. In winter, ice builds up at the base, turning the falls into a frozen cascade. In summer, melt from the glacier feeds the river, and the falls roar with renewed strength. The trail to Svartifoss winds through a landscape shaped by ice. Moraines, piles of rock and gravel, pushed aside by advancing glaciers, mark where the ice once reached. The glacier itself, Skaftafellsjökull, is visible from the trail, a river of ice flowing down from the Highlands. Its surface is scarred with crevasses, deep cracks where the ice has fractured. These crevasses are deadly. Climbers rope themselves together when crossing glaciers. A fall into a crevasse can mean a drop of 30 meters or more into darkness. Some crevasses are bridged with snow, invisible until you step through. Glacier hiking is one of Iceland's most popular activities. Guides lead groups onto the ice, outfitted with crampons and ice axes. The experience is otherworldly, walking on a surface that's constantly moving, slowly flowing downhill. The ice is blue where it's compressed, white where it's aerated. Cracks reveal layers like tree rings, marking years of accumulated snow. In some places, volcanic ash is trapped within the ice, evidence of eruptions that happened centuries ago. But the glaciers are shrinking. Every summer, more ice melts than accumulates in winter. Skaftafellsjökull has retreated over a kilometer in the past century. Photographs from the early 1900s show the glacier extending far beyond its current position. Markers along the trail indicate where the ice edge was in different years. The retreat is accelerating. Within decades, some of Iceland's smaller glaciers will disappear entirely. Larger ones, like Vatnajökull, will survive longer, but they too are diminishing. The cause is clear. Global temperatures are rising. Summers are warmer, winters are wetter, but more precipitation falls as rain instead of snow. Less snow means less accumulation. More melt means faster retreat. The feedback loop is relentless. As glaciers shrink, they expose darker rock and soil, which absorb more heat, accelerating melting. It's a process that, once started, is hard to stop. At the southern edge of Vatnajökull lies Jökulsárlón, the glacial lagoon that has become one of Iceland's most photographed sites. The lagoon didn't exist 100 years ago. It formed as Breiðamerkurjökull Glacier retreated, leaving a depression that filled with meltwater. Now icebergs calve from the glacier's edge, drifting across the lagoon toward the sea. Some are small, the size of cars. Others are massive, the size of houses, glowing blue in the sunlight. The blue color comes from compressed ice. When snow accumulates and compresses over centuries, air bubbles are squeezed out. The resulting ice is so dense it absorbs all colors except blue, which it reflects. The effect is stunning. Icebergs that look white above water reveal deep blue undersides when they flip. And they do flip. As they melt, their centers of gravity shift. Without warning, an iceberg can roll, throwing up waves and spray. The lagoon is about 5 kilometers across and up to 250 meters deep, making it Iceland's deepest lake. It's connected to the ocean by a narrow channel. Twice a day, tides push seawater into the lagoon, mixing with fresh water. Seals follow the tide in, hunting for fish. They lounge on icebergs, unbothered by the cold. Arctic terns dive for fish, their piercing calls echoing across the water. Just across the road from Jökulsárlón lies Diamond Beach, where icebergs that drift through the channel wash up on black sand. The contrast is surreal, translucent ice glittering against volcanic black. Some chunks are the size of fists. Others are massive, weighing tons, stranded by the retreating tide. The ice glows in the sunlight, every facet catching the light. Waves crash, around them undercutting the ice, toppling pieces into the surf. Tourists come here by the busload. In summer, hundreds visit each day, picking their way across the sand, photographing ice chunks. It's beautiful, yes, but also melancholy. Each iceberg is a piece of a glacier that took centuries to form. Now it melts in hours, disappearing into the ocean. The lagoon itself is a symptom of loss, a glacier in retreat, a landscape in transition. From Jökulsárlón, the ring road continues east, skirting the coast. The landscape becomes more barren. Fewer farms, longer stretches between settlements. The mountains close in, steep and forbidding. This is the eastern fjords, where Iceland's geology is oldest. The rocks here are 13 to 16 million years old, ancient by Icelandic standards. Elsewhere on the island, the land is still being born. Here it's already eroding. The fjords are deep, carved by glaciers during the last ice age. Steep mountains rise on either side, their slopes too sheer for vegetation. At the head of each fjord, a small town clings to existence. Fishing villages that once thrived, now struggling as fish stocks decline and young people move to Reykjavik. The towns have names that reflect the landscape. Fastgrúdsfjörður, meaning bad screed fjord. Stöðvarfjörður, steady fjord. Each one isolated, connected to the rest of Iceland only by narrow roads that wind around headlands and through tunnels blasted through solid rock. Life here is hard. Winters bring avalanches. Snow accumulates on the steep slopes, then breaks free without warning. Entire houses have been buried. In 1995, an avalanche in Flateyri killed 20 people. Since then, barriers have been built, deflecting snow away from settlements. But the threat remains. Locals live with it, the way they live with volcanoes and storms. It's just another risk in a land that offers no guarantees. Yet the fjords have a stark beauty. In winter, when snow covers the mountains and ice forms in the harbors, the light is soft and blue. Summer brings endless daylight and wildflowers that bloom in brief, intense bursts. The towns may be small, but they're resilient. Festivals celebrate the fishing traditions. Cafes serve fish stew and thick bread. People know each other, help each other, because in places this isolated, community isn't optional, it's survival. The ring road eventually turns north, leaving the fjords behind. The landscape opens into a plateau. Fewer mountains, more wide, empty plains. This is the northeast, where Iceland feels most like a frontier. Towns are farther apart. The wind blows harder. The sky is bigger. Lake Mývatn, the Midge's Lake, sits in a volcanic zone that rivals Þingvellir for geothermal activity. The lake is shallow, warm, and teeming with life. Midges swarm in clouds during summer, annoying but harmless. They feed fish, which feed birds. The lake hosts some of the highest densities of waterfowl in the world. Ducks, geese, and swans nest along its shores. But the real draw is the geology. Mývatn sits atop the mid-Atlantic ridge, the same rift that runs through Þingvellir. Here, the rift is marked by fissures, craters, and lava formations unlike anywhere else on Earth. Dimmuborgir, the dark castles, is a labyrinth of lava pillars and arches. The formations are eerie, twisted shapes frozen mid-flow. Icelandic folklore says this is where Satan landed when cast out of heaven. Modern science offers a different explanation. A lava lake formed here 2,000 years ago. As it drained, the cooling crust collapsed, leaving pillars standing. But standing among them, the folklore feels more fitting. Nearby, the Mývatn nature baths offer a more tranquil experience, similar to the Blue Lagoon near Reykjavik, but smaller and less crowded. The water is geothermally heated, rich in minerals. Steam rises from the surface. Locals come here to soak, to relax, to escape the cold. In winter, when snow blankets the ground and the temperature drops below freezing, the baths are a refuge. You can float in warm water while snowflakes land on your face. It's surreal, disorienting, perfectly Icelandic. Just north of Mývatn lies Krafla, one of Iceland's most active volcanic systems. The caldera is 10 kilometers across, a vast depression formed by repeated eruptions. The most recent was the Krafla fires, a series of eruptions from 1975 to 1984. Lava flowed from fissures, creating new craters and barring roads. One flow came within meters of a geothermal power plant. The plant survived, and today it harnesses the volcano's heat, generating electricity for the region. Inside the Krafla caldera lies Viti, the Hell Crater, a circular crater filled with opaque, turquoise water. The water is warm, heated by the volcano below. Sulfur stains the rocks yellow. Steam hisses from vents. The smell of hydrogen sulfide hangs in the air. It's beautiful and hostile, inviting and dangerous. A place where life and fire coexist on terms set by the earth. East of Krafla, the road climbs to Namaskard, a geothermal field that looks like something from another planet. The ground is stained red, orange, and yellow. Mud pots bubble, fumaroles hiss. The earth is hot enough to burn skin. Wooden walkways guide visitors through the field, keeping them at a safe distance. But even from the path, the heat is palpable. The air shimmers. The smell is overwhelming. This is the raw edge of geology, a place where the Earth's interior is almost exposed, where you can see, hear, and smell the processes that build continents. It's not comfortable, not peaceful, but it's honest. Iceland doesn't hide what it is. Fire and ice, creation and destruction, a land that never stops changing, and that, perhaps, is why people keep coming back. Not despite the harshness, but because of it. Because here, the planet feels alive. The Westfjords jut into the Denmark Strait like a claw, Iceland's most remote and least visited region. Getting here requires commitment. The ring road doesn't pass through. Instead, narrow gravel roads wind along cliff edges, through mountain passes that close in winter, and across endless expanses where the only sign of humanity is the road itself. The Westfjords are what Iceland used to be before tourism arrived. Quiet, isolated, uncompromising. The landscape here is older than most of Iceland, geologically speaking. The rocks are 13 to 16 million years old, part of the island's original formation. Elsewhere, volcanoes are still building land. Here, erosion is winning. Glaciers carved deep fjords during the Ice Age, creating valleys that flooded when the ice retreated. The result is a coastline so intricate it's impossible to map at scale. Every fjord branches into smaller inlets. Every headland hides coves accessible only by boat. The largest town, Ísafjörður, sits at the head of Skutulsfjörður, sheltered by mountains on three sides. Population around 2,600. Once a thriving fishing hub, it's quieter now. The fish stocks have declined. Young people leave for Reykjavik or abroad. But the town endures stubbornly, the way Westfjords communities always have. Colorful houses line the harbor. Fishing boats rust at the docks. A single main street holds shops, cafes, and a museum dedicated to the region's maritime history. To reach Ísafjörður from the south, you cross Breiðadalsheidi Pass, a high plateau where snow lingers year-round. The road is unpaved, narrow, and utterly exposed. In summer, it's passable. In winter, it's suicidal. Avalanches sweep across regularly. Snowdrifts bury the road. Even locals hesitate to cross in bad weather. But the alternative is a detour that adds hours, so they wait. Watch the weather. Make the crossing when conditions allow. It's a calculated risk, the kind you make when you live this far from anywhere. West of Ísafjörður, the landscape becomes even more dramatic. The road clings to cliffs hundreds of meters above the sea. No guardrails, no shoulders, just a thin strip of gravel between mountain and ocean. One wrong move, and you're airborne. Locals drive it without hesitation, but visitors grip the wheel and inch forward. The views are stunning, yes, but they're hard to appreciate when you're focused on not dying. At the tip of the Westfjords lies Hornstrandir, a nature reserve accessible only by boat or on foot. Once, this was settled land. Farms dotted the coast. Families eked out livings fishing and raising sheep. But the 20th century brought depopulation. Fishing moved to larger ports. Young people left. By the 1950s, the last permanent residents had abandoned Hornstrandir. What remains are the ruins of farms, stone walls slowly collapsing, turf roofs caving in. Today, Hornstrandir belongs to Arctic foxes. Iceland's only native land mammal. They were here before humans arrived. Small, adaptable, and fearless, they thrived in the Westfjords when everywhere else hunted them to near extinction. Now they're protected. Visitors hiking through Hornstrandir often encounter them, curious foxes approaching without fear, watching humans with golden eyes. In summer, they raise kits in dens hidden among rocks. In winter, they hunt seabirds along the cliffs. The cliffs here are among the highest in Iceland. Jökulsárlón, at the westernmost point, rises 440 meters straight from the sea. It's home to millions of seabirds, puffins, razorbills, guillemots, gannets. The cliffs are stacked with nests, birds packed so tightly the rock disappears beneath feathers. The noise is deafening, a constant cacophony of calls, wings, and waves. In summer, the cliffs come alive. In winter, the birds disperse and the cliffs fall silent. Jökulsárlón is also a graveyard. Ships wrecked on these rocks have little chance. The sea here is brutal, currents unpredictable. In 1947, a British trawler ran aground at the base of the cliffs. The crew climbed to safety, hauled up by local farmers using ropes. It was a miracle. The cliffs saved them, even as the sea destroyed their ship. Today, a memorial stands at the cliff edge, a reminder that the ocean gives nothing for free. Heading south from Jökulsárlón, the road eventually reaches Raudasandur, the Red Sands beach. Unlike most Icelandic beaches, which are black volcanic sand, Raudasandur glows in shades of gold, red, and orange. The color comes from crushed shells and coral, rare in Iceland's waters. The beach stretches for miles, empty and windswept. At low tide, tidal pools form, reflecting the sky. At high tide, waves crash against the dunes. It's beautiful in a way that feels wrong for Iceland. Too soft, too inviting. But the wind reminds you where you are. It never stops blowing. Inland from the coast, the Westfjords plateau opens into tundra. No trees, no shelter, just low vegetation, mosses and lichens clinging to rocks. In summer, wildflowers bloom briefly, Arctic poppies white and yellow, nodding in the wind. In winter, the plateau disappears beneath snow. Visibility drops to nothing. Whiteouts erase the horizon. GPS signals weaken. Travelers who venture here unprepared sometimes don't return. The rescue teams know the plateau well, too well. From the Westfjords, returning to the mainland feels like re-entering civilization. The roads improve, towns appear more frequently, services resume. The north coast of Iceland stretches from east to west, a long, relatively flat expanse facing the Arctic Ocean. It's less dramatic than the south coast, but it has its own character. Quieter, colder, more introspective. Akureyri, Iceland's second largest city, sits at the head of Eyjafjörður, the longest fjord in the north, a population around 19,000. Not large by most standards, but here it's a metropolis. Akureyri has everything a city needs: university, hospital, shops, cafes, nightlife. It's where northern Icelanders come for services unavailable in smaller towns. Yet it retains a small-town feel. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. Gossip travels fast. Community matters. The city sits just 40 kilometers from the Arctic Circle, yet its climate is milder than expected. The fjord shelters it from the worst storms. The Gulf Stream moderates temperatures. In summer, the midnight sun lingers. In winter, the days are short, but not as brutal as farther north. Still, snow is common. The city has a ski resort within its limits. Icelanders ski, then return home for dinner. It's casual, unpretentious, very Icelandic. North of Akureyri, the road leads to Godafoss, the waterfall of the gods. It's not the tallest waterfall in Iceland, nor the most powerful, but it has history. According to legend, when Iceland converted to Christianity in the year 1000, the law speaker Þorgeir Ljósvetningagodi threw his pagan idols into this waterfall, symbolizing the old god's defeat. True or not, the story stuck. Godafoss became a symbol of transformation, of letting go. The waterfall is horseshoe-shaped, about 30 meters wide. The Skjálfandafljót River splits around a central island before plunging 12 meters. In summer, the water is a milky blue, fed by glacial melt. In winter, it partially freezes, creating sculptures of ice that catch the light. The roar is constant, audible from the parking lot. Boardwalks lead to viewing platforms. Tourists come, take photos, leave. But the waterfall endures, indifferent to attention. East of Godafoss, the road continues to Húsavík, Iceland's whale-watching capital. The town sits on Skjálfandi Bay, a body of water rich in nutrients and consequently marine life. Whales come here to feed, humpbacks, minkies, blue whales, orcas. In summer, seeing a whale is almost guaranteed. Boats leave the harbor multiple times a day, carrying tourists bundled in survival suits. The bay is cold, even in July. The wind cuts through layers. But when a humpback breaches, launching its 30-ton body into the air, the cold doesn't matter. Húsavík is also home to Iceland's Whale Museum, a serious institution dedicated to studying cetaceans. Skeletons hang from the ceiling. Baleen plates, massive filter-feeding structures, are displayed alongside explanations of whale biology. Interactive exhibits explain migration patterns, echolocation, and the threats whales face. Pollution, ship strikes, climate change. The museum doesn't sugarcoat. Whales are in trouble. The oceans are changing faster than species can adapt. But here, in Skjálfandi Bay, they still come. For now. Further east lies Asbyrgi, a horseshoe-shaped canyon nearly 3 kilometers long and over 1 kilometer wide. The cliffs rise 100 meters, sheer and imposing. At the base, a forest of birch trees grows, rare in Iceland. The canyon is part of Vatnajökull National Park, protected not just for its geology, but for its ecological significance. The trees provide habitat for birds and insects. The sheltered valley moderates temperatures. It's a microclimate, an anomaly in a landscape that offers little shelter. Icelandic legend says Asbyrgi was formed by Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, whose hoof struck the earth. Science offers a less mythical explanation. Glacial floods from Vatnajökull, massive outbursts called Jökulsárlón, carved the canyon thousands of years ago. The floods were catastrophic, carrying icebergs and boulders downstream at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. When they reached Asbyrgi, the force of the water scoured out the canyon in a matter of days. Then the flood stopped. The canyon remained, and slowly, life moved in. At the far northern edge of Iceland lies Jökulsárlón, another canyon shaped by the same glacial floods. Godafoss, Europe's most powerful waterfall, thunders here. It's not the tallest, but in terms of raw energy, nothing else compares. 200 cubic meters of water per second plunge 45 meters over a ledge. The sound is overwhelming, a constant roar that vibrates through the ground. Spray rises 100 meters into the air, visible from kilometers away. Standing at the edge of Godafoss is like standing at the edge of chaos. The water is brown, thick with glacial silt. It churns and boils, crashing onto rocks below with enough force to shake the viewing platform. In winter, the waterfall partially freezes, but it never stops. Even when the surface freezes, water flows beneath, carving new channels. The canyon downstream is a testament to the waterfall's power. Smooth walls, sculpted by millennia of erosion. Godafoss is not gentle. It's not beautiful in the way Seljalandsfoss is beautiful. It's brutal, elemental, honest. West of Akureyri, the north coast flattens into farmland and tundra. Towns become smaller, Distances between them grow. The road hugs the coast, passing through places like Sauðárkrókur and Blönduós, fishing towns that feel frozen in time. The pace of life here is slow. People fish, farm, repair boats, fix roofs, survive. Winter is long, summer is brief, but when it arrives, the land explodes with life. Birds return from warmer climates. Flowers bloom. Sheep are moved to highland pastures. For a few months, the north coast feels almost hospitable. Then autumn arrives and the cycle repeats. At the western edge of the north coast, the road turns south toward the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Often called Iceland in miniature, Snæfellsnes has a bit of everything. Glaciers, volcanoes, lava fields, black beaches, fishing villages. It's compact, accessible, and stunning. At its western tip rises Snæfellsjökull, the glacier-capped stratovolcano made famous by Jules Verne. In Journey to the Center of the Earth, Verne's characters enter the underworld through Snæfellsjökull. The choice was apt. The volcano hasn't erupted in 1,800 years, but it's not extinct. Geothermal activity simmers beneath the ice. Someday it will wake. The glacier itself is shrinking. Photographs from a century ago show a massive ice cap covering the summit. Today, much of the ice is gone. What remains clings to the highest ridges, glowing white against black volcanic rock. Climbing Snæfellsjökull is a popular summer activity. Guides lead groups up the slopes, navigating crevasses and loose rock. The summit offers a 360-degree view. The Atlantic to the west, the Highlands to the east. On clear days, Reykjavik is visible, 120 kilometers away. Around the peninsula's coast, small fishing villages cling to existence. Arnarstapi, Helnar, Riff. These were once thriving ports, exporting fish across Europe. Now they're quiet. Tourism provides income, but it's seasonal. Winter brings storms that batter the coast, waves tall enough to sweep over seawalls. The villages endure, patching roofs, repairing docks, waiting for summer. It's a pattern repeated across Iceland. Places that once sustained themselves through fishing now depend on visitors. The transition hasn't been easy. Some embrace tourism, others resent it, but there aren't many alternatives. One of Snæfellsnes's strangest sights is Landmannalaugar, two massive basalt pinnacles rising from the sea. The larger stands 75 meters high. They are the remnants of a volcanic crater, everything else eroded away. Seabirds nest on their ledges. Waves crash against their bases. They stand like sentinels, weathered but unbowed. Icelanders once believed they were petrified trolls. Modern climbers use them for practice. Both perspectives acknowledge the same truth. These rocks will outlast us all. Further along the coast lies Djúpalónsandur, a black beach littered with shipwrecks. Rusted metal protrudes from the sand, twisted iron, fragments of hull. In 1948, a British trawler ran aground here. All hands were lost. The wreckage remains, slowly being reclaimed by the sea. The beach itself is striking. Black pebbles, smooth and round, cover the shore. Local legend says these are the tears of trolls. More practically, they're volcanic rock, polished by centuries of wave action. At the beach's edge sit 4 lifting stones, traditional tests of strength. Young men would lift them to prove their fitness for fishing. The heaviest weighs 154 kilograms. Few can lift it. Fewer still could do so after a day at sea, exhausted and soaked. But that was the test. Strength wasn't enough. You needed endurance. Because the sea doesn't care how strong you are. It only cares if you can last. Inland from the coast, Snæfellsnes opens into lava fields. Berserkjárn, the berserker lava, covers vast areas, its surface jagged and impassable. The name comes from a saga. 2 Swedish berserkers were promised marriage to local girls if they cleared a path through the lava. They did. Then they were killed, betrayed by the farmer who made the promise. True or not, the story reflects something real. Iceland's sagas are full of betrayal, revenge, and survival. Life here was hard. Honor mattered, but so did pragmatism. Sometimes survival required difficult choices. The Snæfellsnes Peninsula also hosts Kirkjufell, Iceland's most photographed mountain. It rises 463 meters, an almost perfect cone, isolated from surrounding peaks. Waterfalls cascade nearby, framing the mountain in photos. At sunrise and sunset, the light turns golden. In winter, the aurora borealis dances above. It's picturesque to the point of cliché. Yet standing before it, the cliché doesn't matter. It's genuinely beautiful, symmetry in a land that usually resists it. Back toward Reykjavik, the landscape transitions from lava fields to farmland. The volcanic zones are behind. Ahead lies the Reykjanes Peninsula, where Iceland's international airport sits. Most visitors' first and last view of Iceland is this barren volcanic plain. Lava fields stretch to the horizon, black and lifeless. Geothermal vents steam. The Blue Lagoon, Iceland's most famous spa, sits in the middle of it all, an artificial creation that has become iconic. The Blue Lagoon was never natural. It formed in 1976 as a runoff from a nearby geothermal power plant. The superheated water, rich in minerals, pooled in a lava field. People started bathing in it, claiming health benefits. Eventually, it was formalized, commercialized, turned into a destination. Today, it's one of Iceland's top tourist attractions. Visitors soak in milky blue water, faces smeared with silica mud, surrounded by black lava and steam. It's surreal, relaxing, yes, but also strange. A place that exists because of industrial byproduct, now marketed as wellness. The Reykjanes Peninsula is also geologically active. In 2021, after 800 years of dormancy, the Fagradalsfjall volcanic system erupted. Lava fountains shot from a fissure, creating a new lava field. The eruption lasted 6 months. Unlike most eruptions, this one posed no immediate danger. No towns nearby, no glaciers to melt, just lava flowing across empty terrain. People hiked to the eruption site, standing close enough to feel the heat, watching new land being born. It was geology in real time, a reminder that Iceland is never finished. It's always becoming. Iceland's history is as turbulent as its geology. The island was uninhabited until the Vikings arrived in the late 9th century. Norwegian settlers, fleeing political consolidation under King Harald Fairhair, sought new lands. They found Iceland, a place where no king ruled, where land was free for the taking. The early settlers claimed vast territories, established farms, and brought thralls, slaves to work the land. Life was harsh. Winters killed livestock. Storms destroyed homes. Volcanic eruptions buried settlements. Yet the population grew. The Alþingi, established in 930, was revolutionary, a democratic assembly in an age of kings. It wasn't perfect. Only free men could participate. Women had limited rights. Slaves had none. But it was a start. Disputes were settled through law, not just violence. Blood feuds still happened. The sagas are full of them. But the Alþingi provided an alternative, a way to seek justice without endless revenge. In the year 1000, the Alþingi faced a crisis. Christianity was spreading across Europe. Norway's king, Olaf Tryggvason, demanded Iceland convert. Refusal meant war. The Alþingi debated for days, pagans versus Christians. The law speaker Thorgeir was pagan, yet he understood the stakes. Division would destroy Iceland, so he ruled for Christianity. Publicly. Privately, pagans could still worship the old gods. It was a compromise, pragmatic and Icelandic. Unity over purity, survival over principle. Christianity brought changes. Churches were built, monasteries established, sagas were written down, preserving oral traditions. Iceland became a literary center, producing more medieval literature than many larger nations. The prose Edda, the poetic Edda, family sagas detailing feuds, voyages, and daily life. These weren't just stories. They were history, genealogy, law, and culture compressed into narrative form. Memory became text. In 1262, Iceland lost its independence. Internal conflicts weakened the chieftains. Norway intervened. Iceland became a Norwegian colony, then passed to Denmark when the kingdoms united. For 700 years, Iceland was ruled from abroad. Taxes increased, resources were extracted. Icelanders had little say in their own governance. Yet the language survived. The sagas were preserved, identity endured. The 18th and 19th centuries were brutal. Smallpox killed a third of the population. Volcanic eruptions like Laki in 1783 caused famines. Danish rule was often neglectful. Iceland was poor, isolated, forgotten. But the 19th century brought nationalism. Across Europe, people sought independence. Iceland was no different. Jon Sigurdsson, a scholar and politician, led the independence movement. He argued for home rule, for control over internal affairs. Denmark resisted, but gradually Iceland gained concessions, a constitution in 1874, home rule in 1904. Full independence came in 1944, during World War II. Denmark was occupied by Germany. Iceland was occupied by the Allies. First Britain, then the United States. The occupations were pragmatic. Iceland's location was strategic, halfway between Europe and North America. Airfields were built, troops stationed. Icelanders didn't love the occupation, but they used it. On June 17, 1944, Iceland declared independence. Denmark, still under German control, couldn't object. The vote was nearly unanimous. After 700 years, Iceland was free. Post-independence Iceland transformed rapidly. Fishing modernized. The economy grew. NATO membership in 1949 brought controversy, but also security. The U.S. maintained a base in Keflavik until 2006. Icelanders debated their role in the Cold War, a small nation caught between superpowers. But Iceland remained neutral, more or less. It had no military beyond a coast guard. Its defenses were alliance-based, relying on NATO for protection. The late 20th century brought prosperity. Fishing quotas were established, preventing overfishing. Geothermal energy was developed. Tourism grew slowly, then exploded. By the 2000s, Iceland had one of the world's highest per capita incomes. Then came 2008, the financial crisis. Iceland's three largest banks collapsed, victims of reckless expansion. The economy shrank overnight. Unemployment spiked. The currency crashed. Protests erupted. The government fell, but Iceland recovered. The banks were restructured, new regulations imposed. Iceland refused to bail out foreign creditors, angering Europe, but it protected its people. Within a few years, the economy stabilized. Tourism boomed, filling the gap left by banking. Today, Iceland is prosperous again, but the crisis left scars. Trust in institutions eroded. Questions linger about growth, sustainability, and what kind of future Iceland wants. Because the future is uncertain. Climate change is accelerating. Glaciers are melting. Tourism is overwhelming some sites. The population is small, the land fragile. Iceland can't absorb infinite visitors. Infrastructure strains. Popular sites are eroding from foot traffic. Some locals resent tourism, seeing it as commodifying their home. Others depend on it. The tension is real, yet Iceland endures. It always has. Volcanoes erupt, glaciers retreat, storms batter the coasts, and life continues. Because Iceland was never meant to be easy. It was never meant to be stable. It's a land in flux, constantly remaking itself. And the people who live here have learned to adapt, to endure, to find beauty in harshness, to build homes on the edge of chaos. Iceland is not paradise. It's cold, dark, isolated. The land is unforgiving. The weather is brutal. Yet there is something here that draws people, a raw, elemental quality, a sense that this place is real in a way few places are. No pretense, no softness, just rock, ice, fire, and sky. And humans, small and stubborn, carving out lives against all odds. In summer, when the midnight sun lingers and the highlands bloom, Iceland feels almost gentle, almost welcoming. But winter always returns. Darkness falls, storms roll in. The land reminds you what it is. And yet people stay. They fish, farm, write, create, raise families, because this is home. Not despite the fire and ice, but because of them. Because a land this fierce demands fierce love in return. And Iceland, for all its harshness, is deeply loved by those who live here, by those who visit, by anyone who stands at the edge of a glacier or watches lava flow or feels the northern lights ripple overhead. This is Iceland, fire and ice, chaos and beauty, a dance that never ends.